Hey everyone, this is Nadia and welcome to my channel where I talk about learning to code and building a successful career in tech. This is part 2 of the video where I tell the story of how I went from having zero technical skills to being employed as a software engineer in Poland. In part 1 of the video, I talked about how I actually learned to code and which tools and resources I used to do that. So if you're interested, you can check out the video. And in this video, I wanted to talk about kind of the last step in this process, which was getting my first job as a software engineer. As I said in the previous video, I built a couple of toy projects with Ruby on Rails on my own. Those projects weren't great at all, weren't anything to be proud of, but I kind of felt that I had to work with whatever I had. I had some external pressure on me to move to Poland as quickly as possible. So I kind of had to start applying for a job before I felt I was ready. And this is not, one of those videos where somebody's like, oh my God, I was so horrible and I wasn't good enough. But in reality, they were pretty brilliant and their coding was great. In this case, my projects were really crappy and the code there was just awful. There were nested loops within nested loops. It was just disgusting. However, as I said, I kind of had to work with whatever I had at that point and I had to start applying for jobs. So this is what I did. For context, I was based in Belarus, but I wanted to move to Poland for work. I had my eyes set on Kraków, which is my favorite city in Poland, and I wanted to live there. It was my dream. It was also a tech hub for that part of Poland, which meant that the competition for jobs there was very high. So I started applying for Ruby on Rails jobs in Kraków. I prepared a personal website with my projects that I built. I had a blog there. I wrote about my learning process, kind of shared my thoughts, kind of this, learn in public sort of thing. I had a couple of blog posts, nothing too crazy there. Then I also shared a little bit about myself there. I also polished my LinkedIn resume and I was all ready and I was applying. So eventually I heard back from all of the companies in Kraków that I applied to. Most of them, 99% of them said that, oh, everything is so nice, we really like you. However, you don't have any commercial experience, so please reapply when you have it. I was like, yeah, thank you, but it's not really helpful. How can I get experience if nobody is going to hire me? I was invited to one interview, I think, maybe two. One that I remember was a very complex, algorithm style problem that I needed to solve. I had no idea how to do it, so obviously I failed that interview. But that was it. It was kind of not going anywhere. I was a little bit sad, but then I took a step back and I analyzed the situation from an objective point of view, not looking at myself as a person, but kind of looking at myself as just a candidate for the company that was in Kraków. So the way they saw me, it was some random chick that was somewhere in Belarus. In Poland, people at least know what this is, what country this is, and where it is, more or less. I mentioned that I had a visa, but probably a lot of the people who were scanning my cover letter didn't really process that. So probably they thought that maybe I would need a visa and why would they bother? And I didn't have a computer science degree, I didn't have a bootcamp, I didn't know the language. I was just some random person and I just asked myself why would anybody talk to me or why would anybody hire me realistically? I wasn't a celebrity online, I didn't have a social presence, so I didn't have friends in Poland who could refer me to a job. So I was just replying for jobs randomly and kind of hoping for something, right? So taking the step back helped me and to become a little bit more realistic and kind of more humble in a way. So yes, I wanted to move to Kraków, but there were so many people, Polish people, who just finished the best Polish universities in STEM. And they also wanted to work in the very same companies as I was. So what was I thinking really? So I changed my strategy completely. And instead of applying for places where everybody wanted to work and live, I started applying for jobs in cities where basically nobody wanted to live. Some smaller, poorer towns again along the eastern border of Poland, where a lot of the younger people left and went to work in bigger cities like Warsaw and Kraków and others. So I started applying there. I wasn't that specific about working with Ruby, but because you can imagine that in smaller towns, there would be smaller web agencies that don't really use Ruby on Rails. So I was applying for WordPress jobs as well. I didn't know WordPress, but I thought that I could learn and figure this out. I was kind of open and just thinking that I just need to get any kind of professional experience. I didn't really care. I just wanted to, first of all, move there as quickly as possible and also get a job as quickly as possible. So the money aspect, I wanted to make money, but I didn't want to make a lot of money, so it wasn't like a top consideration. So I was like super flexible. And I went to less fancy job boards to look for jobs. So I used the website that is in Poland is very popular. It's kind of used for people to sell for a lot of, purposes, but mostly I think for selling their old stuff, like old boots or furniture and that kind of stuff. But also they have a job section, which is mostly about, I think, unskilled labor, but also there are skilled jobs there as well. So I was applying for programmer jobs there, web development jobs, whatever they were called. And it was incredible. Like, people started getting back to me, and they were asking me, like, why do you want to come here? Like, why do you want to move to this town? Like, nobody wants to. And they were curious to talk to me about my motivation, about my skills. So I talked to a couple of those companies. Those employers were very interested. They weren't like spammed with applications all the time. They were curious to learn a little bit more about me. And for me, it was super useful, and I'm very grateful to them that they ever talked to me, because I learned a little bit more about the market, the expectations, the tasks, and like the process and all of this. So eventually, I did that for a little bit, and then eventually I did a couple of test tasks for different locations in Poland. And then eventually I lucked out. I applied for a job with a small startup based in Warsaw, and they reached out to me. They sent me a take-home challenge, which involved building a Ruby on Rails app, adding some features in, something like that. There was some JavaScript thrown in as well. I completed that challenge. Then I heard back from them that they liked it, and they invited me to a Zoom call with the founders. We talked about my experience, kind of what I did before, what I studied. They asked me about the libraries that I used, generic, some technical questions around the technical stack that I have worked with, and talked about my motivation and the company and things like that. And yeah, I think at the end of it, they were like, you seem fine. We would love to offer you the internship, 1 month internship, like no promises, no contract, nothing, like no benefits. Just come over and we can start. And I was like, sounds great. I can be there, like, not tomorrow, because I was like really far from Warsaw and I wasn't packed. I was just living, in Belarus. So I was like, I can be there next week. And they were surprised, but they were like, okay, whatever. And I was in Poland within 1 week. So I didn't really have any promises made to me, and kind of I moved there on a whim. I was kind of hoping that this will work out, but also there was no guarantee that this would. But luckily, or thanks to my hard work, it did work out. I passed the internship, and then I was offered a job, and I worked at that company for around 8 or 9 months afterwards as a Ruby on Rails developer, also doing front end, so more of a full stack position. That was my first job. This is how I got it. I hope this was useful. I hope this was insightful for you in some way. Please let me know in the comments what you thought, and maybe share how you got your first job, because I think that this might be useful for others who are currently looking for their first jobs. When you're in this process of trying to find your first tech job, it might seem that this will never happen, because you get rejection after rejection, but then you just need to get one yes, basically, to change this whole situation around and to change your life. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching and spending your time with me, and I hope to see you in the next video.